Place right. Ready to come to order. Hear ye, United States. The Honorable Chairman, Mike Atwood, all of our President, Commission, all nine, four, God bless the great United States. God bless Putnam County. Chairman, I find these rooms to be more.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Major. We appreciate that so much. So we're going to call on District 2 for our invocation as well as our pledge. Commissioner Sandlin.
Tonight we've got David Hill with us. He's the head of the Tennessee Bible College here in town, and he's been a longtime friend, and he's been a good supporter for our district for years. And so we would ask him to ask our invocation.
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, eternal Father, we thank you for allowing us to open our eyes and see this beautiful fall day. We're thankful, Father, for the freedom that we enjoy in this great nation, in this land. Father, we're mindful of the price that's been paid for that freedom. We pray, dear Father, that the work and the efforts of this commission will be to the building up of this community and not to the tearing down. We pray, dear Father, for our country in this time of turmoil and sickness and sorrow. And we pray that you would lift us up in your way, Father, in keeping with your will. Thankful, Father, that you've blessed us. We pray for those who are sick and hurting, and we pray that if it is your will, we can see deliverance from the virus and the pandemic that has affected so many. Father, we pray that life will be lived to the blessing of others, that good will be upheld, righteousness will prevail. Father, we pray that the wickedness of the world can be defeated by those things that are done, even by those who are in the lead, by those who lead from Washington, by our judges, by our courts, and by commissions just like this as they make laws. We pray that you would be mindful of each one and help us, Father, as we seek to do better and as we seek your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Hill.
Please join me with our pledge to the flag of the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
All right.
Welcome, commissioners. Good to see you this month. Before anybody says anything about the platform, it's hopefully be an opportunity to see you guys a little better. So if you have something to say, I can recognize that. Also, I've already been called Mr. Rogers with my sweater. AJ decided that I was Mr. Rogers. So enough said. Okay.
Just in this neighborhood. Just in this neighborhood.
Again, welcome. We're glad to have you folks, and we're glad to have our crowd. Good group tonight, so welcome. We will entertain you, so give that opportunity. Item number item number 4 is the roll call by our clerk, Mr. Neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets and press yes for me, please. Everybody press yes. Are you working? There we go. Good job. Mr. Chairman, we have 23 present, 1 absent tonight. There is a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Neighbors, very kindly. Item number 5 is approval of the agenda. I guess we need to adjust the roads that will not be considered tonight since they are on the agenda. The only one we're considering, Madam Chair, was which one?
Ben Jared.
So the other 2 we will strike from item B under A1. So make that change on the agenda, if you will.
Motion to approve the adjusted agenda?
Second.
All right, don't think there was any other adjustments, Mr. Mayor. We weren't eliminating anything else that I can remember.
No, sir.
Okay, so we got a motion and second on approving the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Favor the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 5, item number 6 is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and second on the minutes. Any discussion? Favor that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 7, unfinished business, report of standing committees, planning.
No unfinished business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Physical review.
No unfinished business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And nominating.
No unfinished business.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Item B is here from the Judicial Commissioner Committee. Mr. Porter, you want to
Mr.
present
Chairman,
that?
we'd like to ask that that be postponed until next month. We've had some issues come up that we needed to have another meeting and discuss.
All right. Do I need to motion that because it is on the agenda? Is there any reason formally?
I'll make a motion.
Well, let's do it formally then. We're going to remove this and, which meeting, would you say a month at least, Mr. Porter?
It'll be next month.
Okay, let's postpone this to next month. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and second. Any discussion about the motion? Favorite, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, folks. Item C is other unfinished business. Any new business, any other unfinished business? These lights, Randy, I mean, I'm almost 70 years
I'll turn
old.
it back on, Mr. Chairman, but we'll just have to turn it back off.
No. So any other unfinished business? Seeing none, we'll move on. New business, report of standing committees, planning.
Thank you. Planning recommends approval of the following vehicle be transferred from EMS to Parks and Rec, the 2015 Ford F-450, and I so move. Second.
Got a motion and second on the transfer of the equipment. Any discussion? Favorite, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Next, we recommend approval to set the speed limit for Ben Jared Road to 35 miles per hour, and I so move. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Favor the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
That concludes planning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 2 is physical review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 on Fiscal Review Committee's agenda, consider budget amendments to the County General Fund, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on County General? Mr. Neighbors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you take your handsets, you favor the motion tonight, vote yes. If you not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right. Hang on just a second, Mr. Chair. Chair, we have 23 voting yes, 0 no, 1 absent when the roll was called. Motion carries. Ready for item 2.
Item number 2, consider budget amendments to the Road Department Fund, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the road department. Any discussion? Mr. Wayne.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote no. Yes, if you don't favor the motion, vote no. Oh, I can't see either. All right. Mercy. Evidently needs some more
We're both
backup.
wearing glasses.
Yes, I know. I'm telling you, brother. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, have 23 voting yes, 0 no, 1 absent. Motion carries. Ready for item 3.
Item number 3, consider approval of budget amendments to the General Purpose School Fund, and I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second on general purpose school. Any discussion?
All right, seeing none, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Jerry. Mr. Ford. All right, all votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right. Excellent. Mr. Chairman, we have 23 voting yes, 0, no, 1 absent. Motion carries. Item D.
Item number 4, consider approval of the purchase of the Reneo property for the landfill, subject to proper diligence and a mutually satisfactory purchase agreement. This came from the committee with no recommendation. However, I do so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, so we'll open discussion, and I think, Mayor Porter, you have some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a aerial view of the current landfill that's down on Cookville Boat Dock Road. I was approached, 3 months ago by Mr. Renio that owns the property that adjoins, to the landfill, which is about 23 and a half acres. And he was asking if we were interested in buying it. Mr. Renio doesn't live on the property and was interested in selling it. We worked with him and came up with an option. I did an option on it to purchase it so I could bring it to the commission. It's about 23 and a half acres. We had the surveyor has estimated that. It's not been that long ago since it was surveyed, but we want to make sure that it's exact. So the surveyor should be going down in the next little bit to draw the line, this red line that goes across the property, and get us the exact amount. But Mr. Renio wants $6,500 an acre for the property. This adjoins the landfill. We had it tested by our engineers, and they say it's great property. It will fit well into the landfill operations. It would extend our landfill there for at least another 10 years on top of what we did a few months ago when you bought the other parcel of property that's up to the north of this. When you start looking at land, and I talked to the Solid Waste Committee, they've already approved this, and we were pricing land around in that area was, I think, Darren, you had some, it was 12,000 an acre and higher. So we thought that it would be a good deal for the landfill. I think I talked to you earlier when we bought the other piece of property. Anytime we can buy property around the landfill that's going to extend that life, it's a very good deal, because the last thing you want to do, I remember back in the 80s when they were searching for this landfill property to have a landfill, and it was a nightmare for the county commission. So this is, in my mind, and in some of the realtors I've talked to, and in the Solid Waste Committee's opinion, a very good deal to be able to purchase this property and extend the life of the landfill for at least 10 more years.
Yes, Ms. Dunn.
Just curious, I know that's a larger parcel there that he's splitting that 23.6 acres off of.
Yes,
Because I
ma'am.
did a little research. Is there any reason we wouldn't buy more of it? Is that all he wanted to sell, or what?
Well, it's actually all they wanted to sell, but when you start getting into other property, it has a creek and waterfall and a lot of not good area that we would be interested in for the landfill. So we kind of draw the line that would protect that area, but at the same time give us what I would consider the good landfill property that we could use.
Thank you.
Mr. Watson.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, is there money budgeted for this property?
This would just come out of fund balance.
And we shouldn't have an issue?
We shouldn't have no issue at all.
And then another question, on the master plan, where do we stand with the prior purchase, and how many years out do we have with the surrounding land?
We think that this gives us 25 plus years. It could be higher than that. The thing that's hard to estimate is will the building boom that we have going on now, will that continue? If it does, you have more construction waste. If the building boom should slow down, we wouldn't have as much. So it's kind of hard to predict out past 25 years on this, but it would get us out at least to that, is what our engineers is telling us.
And within that master plan, other properties? I mean, is there potential, to expand if need be?
So anytime we can find property around the landfill, I bring it to you. We've only had 3 parcels. This makes the 3rd parcel since I've been in office in the last 7 years. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I bring it to you for you to either approve or not approve. This just makes good sense in our master plan on this landfill. And remember, this landfill is only CD, construction waste type material. It's not garbage. So we want to keep it open and try to make it last as long as possible.
Thank you.
Any other, and please, if you will, folks, let's use our,
You can't.
Mr. Christopher?
I'm sorry, I apologize. If y'all help me, a blind old man, it certainly would be beneficial. Mr. Christopher, you are recognized.
I don't know that anybody can see a request to speak queue, but, Mayor, does this push us towards a waterway at all? And is that, or an issue with that? I just don't know what's kind of beyond left of this image right here.
Once you get past to the left, it does go down to a creek back there, so that's the reason we weren't interested in going any further on that piece of property. It's a nice creek and waterfall that goes back up to that property.
Is there any buffer that we need to maintain or be concerned about?
We're required to do that by TDEC regulations, so there will be a buffer.
Will it eat into this property that would be purchased, or?
Well, the buffer will be the western side of that property.
I guess what I'm saying is would the buffer run into any of this purchase property such that this whole purchase could not be used?
No. We test the water, the groundwater, and all those kind of things, and the buffer that's required. This property has a buffer now. It's going to extend the property down to where the buffer would be on the next piece of property. We'd be able to use most of it. They actually, with some use of that property back many years ago, they did pull out some truckloads of dirt that went to build the water plant that's the city owns. But so it makes it even better since that dirt's already been removed for us not have to remove that dirt. So it's a prime piece of property for what we're looking at using it for.
Anybody else? Mr. Jordan, you're recognized.
For being a blind old man, you're seeing us pretty good out here in this darkness. I was about to pile on with
dark.
that. I was about to pile on that a little bit too about the darkness here. Maybe it's a reminder to John Ross to make sure we pay the light bill. But no, what I was going to ask Mayor Porter is, with the growth that we've got going on, are we doing a good job of, I guess you could say, digesting a lot of the garbage that we have coming in pretty well? Do we see a major change in waste piling up compared to, say, 10, 20 years ago? Are we doing a pretty good job of adjusting to all the new garbage coming in?
Our solid waste department has done a really good job, but we saw a major increase, 30% in the last couple of years with household garbage. We are seeing an increase in CD waste that goes to this landfill. That's the reason in our 5-year plan, one of the main things is the transfer station. We're currently looking, as I told you about at a previous meeting, we're looking at trying to expand the transfer station to be able to handle the increase in garbage. But Doug and them and our engineers they look at that constantly, and we'll probably be bringing a plan back to you on the transfer station sometime in the near future. This pretty well takes care of our CD landfill, though, with the purchase of these land for many, many years to come.
I know, of course, we have to handle our own needs, I know, of course, first and everything. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves, but is there any possibility of possibly taking on more garbage from other areas for revenue, or probably not in our best interest at this time?
Probably not in our best interest this time. We transfer all of our household garbage. It is trucked out we have a bid with the Republic. It used to be Sandtech, and they were merged with Republic, and so that's hauled out each day. It was going to the Ray County landfill. It's now going to the Rutherford County landfill. That's not our choice. That's the choice of Republic as to where they take it. But so all the household garbage doesn't stay in Putnam County. That landfill that was down off of Baxter Road on South Fork Road was shut down many, many years ago. And then there was some household garbage put on the back part of this property many years ago too, but was shut down, and now we have the transfer station that it's hauled out on a per ton basis.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Mr. Neighbors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your handsets, if you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. All votes are in. Does anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Mr. Chairman, I have 22 voting yes, 1 voting no, 1 absent. Motion carries. Item E.
Item number 5, discuss offer made to purchase the county-owned 29 acres of Shoney's Hill property. And Mr. Chairman, if you would, I have a motion that's a little bit lengthy, so I'd like to read it. I move that we find it in the best interest of the county and that the county commission approves the execution of an option agreement and a subsequent mutually agreeable purchase agreement with B3 Realty LLC for a purchase price of $2 million for approximately 29.19 acres of the property at 505 East Veterans Drive, as shown on the survey by Vic Surveying LLC, for the following reasons. 1, the property has been appraised for $598,500. According to the appraisal obtained by the county mayor, the purchase price of $2 million is far above the appraised value of the property. The property in question is not currently being used by the county and has not been used by the county for decades. Number 3, the money that the county realizes from the sale of this property will help to fund the construction of a new highway department and new bus garage, both buildings of which are in need of upgrading. Number 4, selling the foregoing property pursuant to a private sale is in the best interest of the county. The county mayor has published the availability of the foregoing property and has taken proposals from several interested parties, with the proposal from V3 Realty being the highest offer. Also, as a part of this motion, county mayor is given the authority to sign any necessary documentation to effectuate the option agreement and sale of the property. Further, the county mayor, with the assistance of the county attorney, is given the authority to draft and execute the aforementioned option agreement and purchase agreement to effectuate the sale pursuant to the terms as discussed at this county commission meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and then that was lengthy. In fact, could you defend me next time I need, that had to be a lot of lawyer talk, but well spoken.
I did not prepare that.
Okay. I hope everybody understood what the motion was. It is to purchase and to give the mayor the ability to do all the documentation, do due diligence, and to execute the purchase.
Sale.
I'm sorry. That's a better word. The sale of this property for, as the motion states, a whole lot more money than it was appraised at. $2 million is a wonderful, wonderful offer. So according to Mr. Porter, we're looking at about 90 days to close. Would that be somewhat accurate?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Porter?
I have a presentation if you want to see it or not.
You want to go ahead and I have one, but you
I'll
denied
defer
it.
my request to speak inside for the presentation because he may answer my question.
I have a point of order.
Please.
Do we not have to declare this surplus property before?
You already have.
Have we?
You did back in April.
Okay, never mind then. That was with the fairgrounds, wasn't it? I stand corrected.
And make the point that this does not include the present bus garage or maintenance. That property is not included in what we're selling with this. There's what, 3 acres? How much did you say was left?
Almost 9 acres. that will be
Almost
left.
9 acres left to be sold. This is just the Hill property. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in April, we talked about this when we were looking at building a new school bus garage in County Highway Department. The part that's over in blue is where both of those buildings are currently located. This does not include that it will be done at a later date. We're looking at the 29.19 acres that I've always known as Shoney's Hill is what we've always called it. It has a water tank and a tower site that has been there for many, many years. That is being kept by us. And then we have an easement that goes up to that property. That is being kept by us. It is the sale of the 29.19 minus the tower site, water tank, and then the other almost 9 acres that's left where the county highway department and county road department and bus garage is. Back last April when y'all approved it surplus, when I advertised the fairgrounds property on the national media LoopNet, I also advertised this property to see if there was any interest. I had 6 interested parties. All of those parties were allowed to submit bids. All of it was kept confidential. Myself and attorney Jeff Jones and Chairman Atwood were the only 3 that knew. So they started giving proposals on this back in September. This has been going on for a while. Finally, last Friday, everybody said uncle except for one. And so we wound up with the best offer that I'm bringing you tonight. I'd had the property appraised back almost 2 years ago. It originally appraised at $300,000. I had it reappraised and it came in just shy of $600,000. So the best and highest offer, which I thought was just great, is $2 million to purchase the property. They're asking for a 90-day option that gives them the opportunity to do their due diligence. They want to do an environmental study and so forth on the property to make sure that there's not something that we don't know about. As far as I know, Randy Jones is here since he's been the road supervisor. They store gravel and some stuff up on the site, but it's never been used for anything other than that. There's been no use for the property other than the water tank, the radio tower, and then some storage up there. They are offering a $10,000 non-refundable option price for them to get 90 days to do their due diligence to look at purchasing the property for $2 million. That $10,000 non-refundable would go into effect 5 days after you pass it tonight. The name of the developer that's looking at it is V3 Realty. And so that's what I'm bringing to you tonight. If you pass it tonight, you'd be approving what Commissioner Cassidy made in his motion. It's not a done deal. Okay, it's just like when we do an option like we did to purchase the land at the landfill. Should we find something, most of the time we've already done our due diligence before I bring it to you, but sometimes we haven't had the chance. If there's something comes up that they find that is just detrimental to what they're looking at doing, they may decide not to exercise the option. If they don't, we go back and we'll go back to the second highest bidder and see if they're interested. And to do, I'd bring you something else back. So that's what's before you tonight.
If you will, use your handsets. I've already got Mr. Donadio on the handset. Do you have a question, Mr. Donadio?
I do. You said B3 Realty, correct? What do they normally, what is their normal development? Do they do residential, commercial? Do we have any idea what to expect?
Mostly commercial.
Mostly commercial. Any indications what they intend to do with the property? I'm just wondering. If they buy it, it's theirs.
Yeah, they're looking, they own other property in Cookeville and Putnam County. And they're looking at developing it is what I was told. Of course, once we sell it to them, they can do what they want to, but I think they're looking at developing it.
And have they expressed any interest in the adjoining property that is now the garage?
Yes.
I'll stop right there. Thank you.
And I'll have to stop right there.
Commissioner Wilson.
I was just going to ask whether their use for that Commissioner Donadio just brought up. So I would withdraw my motion.
Commissioner Neal.
Yes, sir. The question I have is, there's a bad area over there behind the bus garage where we've had some disposals, and in years past, I'm talking about a long time ago, Have we got that rectified yet, Mayor?
We're selling the property as is. There is no rectifying on our behalf. That'll be up to them, whatever they decide to do with it if they buy it.
Is that part of this property that's going up? Okay, and the other question I have is, the easement. How would, I'm thinking about the easement, if we sold that property, where would the easement come in at?
They've guaranteed us an easement. So right now it comes in there. Mr. Jones built one that comes in behind his building, but the one we originally used is the one that comes in by Shoney's, the old Shoney's building. That was the easement for many, many years. And Randy, I don't know if you built it or your predecessor built it, but, yeah, Red Lamb, I think, may have built it, but, we use both of them, but we have two easements coming in. They've guaranteed us that we'll have an easement to get up to the water tank and the radio tower. Now, it may not be at the same place, but we have a guarantee of an easement to get there.
Well, what I was thinking about, if we sold the other property, we don't want to make that easement detrimental to the sale of that other property. You know what I'm saying? Like if it was, we don't want it to interfere with the bus garage and the highway department. That property, we don't want for that to be detrimental
Oh,
to
no,
somebody.
I
who might want
understand.
that.
I'm gonna let Attorney Jones speak to that.
Actually, the deed that the county received in 1960 laid out two easements that are there right now. One easement is the one that their reporter was talking about in Job Drive. The other easement is incorporated in Veterans Drive. So they're already part of the chain of title. And there's really nothing to do about that. It's
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jordan Wasson.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mayor Porter, you may be able or may not be able to speak to this, I'm not sure, but with the development, of course, like you said, they're typically commercial. Would that include probably a major clearing similar to what happened, of course, at Chops Eagle Point? Would that include a major clearing of the land to the point where a lot of the mountainside is removed? Because with the water tower being on top and the radio tower, I didn't know if that would.
Well, they can't do
interfere with
anything that'd be detrimental to either one of those. There's a big, and I think, don't hold me to it, but I think there's a 30-inch water line that feeds the water tower that goes up. There is an easement for that. I think that the city has, Jeff, or I don't, that's, but they can't do anything that would affect that water lines, and they can't do anything that would detrimentally affect the water tower or the radio tower. So I don't think either one of those would be and I can't tell you what exactly they're going to do, but for them to build something up there, they've got to do some clearing. But they can't do anything that's going to mess up the water tank.
That's what I was curious about too, because typically, especially if I don't like you said, I don't know what kind of commercial office, retail, whatever it might be, but typically when you have larger structures like that, they want more flat land. So that's why my curiosity was probably because, like you said, the water main and then also the tower on top. So
Right.
I was trying to put all the ducks in my mind in a row there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about it, and Attorney Jones does too. We worked pretty hard on this.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Dunn.
What's the current zoning on that property?
Commercial,
GC1?
is that right? I think that's right.
I'm not sure it's owned. It's county property.
That's true. Yep. But I think the property around it is
Around it,
zone
yeah.
commercial. Yeah.
Did I take care of you, Mr. Dunn?
No.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes, thank
Yeah, one more question. You mentioned, Jeff, you said that the easement was in on Job Drive and on Veterans Drive?
No.
Veterans Drive didn't exist,
So, but it's,
but it's been incorporated into Veterans
Okay.
Drive. That would be, north side of the property.
and, okay, so the access here, you said was from Shawnee's, from the Shoney's restaurant side, is that correct?
Correct. I think that's Job Drive.
No.
No, Job
No,
is
no, no,
over
no.
on,
Okay, I may be.
No, it's off South Jefferson. It goes in right beside of Shoney's, in between Shoney's and Long John Silver's.
okay. But Shawnee's is still down for remodel, so I guess does that take, will that pass along all the way? I mean, there's no way to take that off, right? So there's no way to remove that? We're not gonna allow that to be removed, is what I'm getting at.
Well, we're gonna have to have access to water.
Exactly.
There's
But we have three options now, right? Three easements.
No,
Okay, that's good to know.
no, we have two.
We got one on Joff.
No, we
Okay.
don't own anything on job. We don't have any easement on job.
Okay, so I'm sorry. One on the old veterans, across his veterans that way, and then one at the Shoney's. So there's two.
We have two. We had one in the back of where the road department is now. That's not an easement. That's Red Lamb built that to have an easier way to go up to the property. The big easement we have goes inside of Shoney's, but what these people have guaranteed us is that they may want to move this road that goes up and it may want to circle and come around the back way, but they've just guaranteed us that we will have an easement.
Good deal.
To the property.
Thank you for explaining
Yep.
that. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Sorry for the confusion.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we will also have discretion as to where that needs to go, whether or not it's sufficient on purpose.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Cassidy? No. Mr. Bennett?
In this proposal, are we maintaining enough land on the very top of the hill for us and for the city of Cookeville for future expansion of towers and or water tanks?
We have enough room to do a tower expansion. I don't think the city would ever look to put another water tank there. I mean, it's a pretty good sized tank now. I mean, I think they'd be looking at other locations if they were looking at water tanks, but I can't speak for them, but they know that we're looking at selling it. I've talked with them and, they didn't.
They've not indicated they want any more land. We're going to keep enough for our future growth needs.
Right.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we got a motion and a second to give the mayor authority to enter into this negotiation and the sale of this property. Mr. Neighbors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Mr. Chairman, I have 23 voting yes, 0 no, 1 absent. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 6, discuss using ARP funds for employee stipends, Health Department addition, and water project. And again, this came from the Fiscal Review Committee with no recommendation.
It is my recommendation that we separate these, that we discuss them each one at a time. Mr. Porter, if you want to, and if everybody's in agreement with that, we'll start with employer stipend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to refresh you, remember we're getting $15.5 million from the federal government in American Rescue Plan funds. We already have about 7.7 of that that they gave to us back in May, and we have it set up. I told you I'd be bringing you back some projects that we start looking at. One of them would be a stipend to all of our county employees for coming to work during COVID and risking their lives and their family's health and so forth to make sure that the county business was taken care of. One of them is going to be a health department addition, broadband expansion, water projects, and we'll get into those as we go forward. The first one is the employee stipend. We have 495 full-time employees. That's in county general and the road department. That does not include schools. Of course, schools is separate. I believe it was at the last commission meeting I was talking to you about this stipend, and we originally had said $1,200 to $2,000 on the original amount, and some of the commissioners had said they thought that ought to be higher. So I'm bringing it back to you tonight so you know that about every $1,000 that you're going to give is about $500,000 in money for the full-time employees, to give you an idea of where we're going. So I'd come up with about $2,000 per employee. We had talked before about, do you want to do any extra for the law enforcement and EMS that really were out dealing with the COVID on a first-hand basis and transporting COVID patients and arresting people with COVID and having to deal with people that had COVID in the jail and so forth. And then I think we have to think about part-time employees. Do you want to do something with the part-time? We have about 114 part-time employees that may work anywhere from no hours of pay period to 35 or 40 hours of pay period. The 30 that will work the most hours are the employees that work for solid waste, that work at the manned waste sites that we have across the county. So I think you need to probably, they were out there, those were open all the time, and they were dealing with people with on a day-to-day basis. So I think you need to think about those as a part-time employees. The requirements, and these are what I've come up with. If you want to change these, you can. This would be for this past fiscal year, July 2020 through June 30th of 2021. I figured that the employees, we've got employees that have changed. Some new ones have come on, that they would have to have worked at least 55% of the fiscal year. So that means that they've been there at least 6 months, over 6 months to be able to receive this, and that they must have had to come to work 80% of the time. We did have some people that worked from home. There was a few, that was very few. But the way that I read the act, people that work from home would not be eligible for this. So that's the reason that I put that they had to be at work at least 80% out of that fiscal year. And the reason I picked 80% is that we had some employees that had COVID. And we had some employees that their families had COVID. And they were out on medical leave, some of them more than once. So I didn't want to penalize someone that had to be out for 2 weeks because they had COVID, and then 2 more weeks because one of their kids or their spouse or whatever tested positive for COVID. So that's how I came up with those numbers. So I think you need to make a decision is how much do you want to do for an employee, and are you okay with the stipulations that I put forth in what they had to meet to be able to get the money?
Open the floor. Ms. Adams?
Yes, I really do appreciate our county workers, and I did not have a problem with a reasonable bonus for those who worked through COVID. But our job is also to take care of the whole county, and there are thousands of people who worked through COVID, some of them very low-paying jobs, minimum wage jobs that came to work every day during COVID, and they're not getting any bonuses. We had a lot of small business owners and their employees who were shut down by state mandate for quite a while and struggled to make ends meet. They're not getting any bonuses, and they're still struggling to get back on top of all the money that they lost being closed down. It just seems to me that with that and the fact that we have hundreds of people who do not have access to clean drinking water right now, and we can use some of these funds for that as well as other things that benefit the entire county. Even though $15 million sounds like a lot, it's not going to be all that much by the time we start spreading it too thin. I was okay with the $1,200 for the employees and those frontline guys that were out there transporting people with COVID. Yes, I'm fine with $2,000. I just hate to see us spending all that money when I'm looking at constituents in all of our districts who did the same thing, and they're not getting any bonus at all.
Is that it, Ms. Adams?
I'm sorry.
Is that it?
I guess maybe I should say I'm making a motion that we go with the $1,200 and $2,000 for the Sheriff's Department and the EMS.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Hearing none, that fails. Anything else, Ms. Adams?
I'm done.
Mr. Nadio?
The first thing that I would like to do is assess, I'm a nurse, this is what I do, I assess. I'd like to know how much the body is willing to set aside for these specific bonuses. And the way that I would like to see this calculated, I guess, if we're going to do something like this, and I feel it's certainly appropriate, we simply take the hours worked by each individual who qualify under these stipulations, and then just run the calculation how much they would get by the number of hours that they work. So the part-timers would get a part-time portion, the full-timers would get a full-time portion, and it would be appropriate throughout, running a simple calculation. If you want to add an extra a little bit for those who are running EMS, I'm not going to argue with that, but I'd like a simple calculation based on the total amount of money that we would like to allocate for this.
So are you making a motion of any kind?
It would have to go back to work on the calculations. I don't know that we could work on that right now, but that's where I'd like to see this go. That way it removes any ambiguity from the issue. I'm not sure if this is the right place to do it, but following these guidelines, I'm just trying to figure out how best to do that, and it might take a recess for that.
Yeah, we couldn't do that tonight. That's going to take a lot of work to go back.
Exactly. I mean, it's not as bad as it sounds, but it could not happen tonight. I guess that's my issue here.
So, are you making any type of motion?
Would it be appropriate to set this aside 1 month so we could come up with a calculation? We might need an ad hoc committee to do that.
That's certainly a motion. If
That's my motion.
All right, we've got a motion to postpone this at least 1 month for consideration. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion at this point? Now, I've got folks up. Mr. Neal, I had you. Do you want to speak on the motion?
Well, what I'd like to say about the motion, I understand what AJ's saying, and I do agree with him. But how do we calculate that person who was an employee and who developed COVID because he was working and then he was sent home for that time? So you see what I'm saying? It's a catch-22. He would have gotten the extra pay if he hadn't have been working and had to go home because of COVID.
Certainly, that's a consideration. There's no question as it relates to the motion, and a negative vote toward the motion would, I guess, satisfy some of that. I'm not trying to talk anybody into anything, but remember the motion, okay? This motion, Mr. Parliamentarian, are you wanting a point of order at this point? Okay.
No, I just...
Well, let me finish then. We've got a motion on the floor, and that's where our discussion needs to be centered on moving this 1 month, postponing it 1 month. And if you're speaking on that motion, then we want to hear from you, okay? If not, then we need to move on and vote on that motion and then move in whatever direction that vote takes us. Is that making any sense? I'm glad they got this podium because I can look out there and see. So I'm not trying to ask you to do anything you don't want to do. Ms. Dunn, I saw your hand. Are you wanting to speak to the motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll recognize you.
Yes, I would, I'm against that motion. I think we need to go ahead. I think this has been something the county employees have known was coming, and I'm sure as any of us that work anywhere, when you know that there's a possibility of a bonus coming, you know, a lot of them got medical bills, different things that need to get paid, and a lot of them are probably banking on it. I'm just saying. And so I would speak against the motion.
All right, do I have anybody else on the motion? Mr. Christopher?
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned about that characterization of a bonus. We're all being taxed to generate these funds that are coming back down in some fashion. What I would like to know is there any way that we can see some description of what this funding should be used for, what the basis is for it as it's distributed to the county? I mean, I can pull up some various...
In all due respect, that is not addressing the motion.
It is addressing
the motion. I'm
the
asking
chair,
if
we can be provided
point of order.
information.
Point of order, Mr. Christopher. Your question is what a month's delay would do. That's what the motion is. If you want more information, then vote for the motion to extend it.
That information can be provided. Is there anything we can read to educate ourselves on where this money is coming from, what it's being directed to?
You want me to?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. The American Rescue Funds is very specific in that you can provide the employees that work through COVID with a stipend, is what it's called. I'm not calling it a bonus. I'm calling it a stipend for coming to work and risking their their health and so forth to be there during COVID. You had a lot of places that shut down. We were not one of them. And so that's what it's for. It's very specific. I can give you the literature. It's probably 2 paragraphs, but that's one of the eligible expenditures that county government can use.
Just anything that you can provide us to help characterize how we make a decision on who gets what fund.
Now that's not going to be there. That's left up to the commission as to what stipulations you set on the funds. There's not any that I've seen.
No guidance whatsoever.
Other than they had to come to work, they had to be at work, and there's very little when it comes to anything like that, Commissioner Christopher. If it would have, I'd have brought it to you already, but there's not much there. There's a lot of the other counties have already done this. Several of the cities have done it. Like the school boards already issued their checks to their employees. And it's been along these same lines. I've looked at what everybody else is doing and tried to follow along with what they were doing also.
Okay, Mr. Rogers, you want to speak to the motion?
2 questions relating to the motion and 1 comment. Mr. Christopher, the funding is up to the commission. We have to approve everything, so it's going to fall on us to decide where that money's going, because we're the funding body, so we have to approve that. So I don't know if that helps on that. 2 questions pertaining to the motion. Who appoints the committee? Who's appointing the committee?
Pardon me?
Who appoints the committee?
That would be the county mayor.
Okay. Second thing, Mr. Porter, how much time do you need to calculate this with all the other department heads?
Just to be blunt, honest, as I always am, that's going to be a nightmare when you start going back with almost 500 county employees, trying to figure out all the hours that they worked in that year, and then figuring out how much you're going to give each employee. It's going to take a lot of time, which most of that work's going to be done on us. And I don't disagree with you that might be a better way to do it, but it's going to take a lot of work to go back and figure all that out when you start looking at that many employees.
I'd like to rescind my motion.
Thank you.
You're removing your motion?
Yes, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Sounded like a good idea at the time.
If we didn't have anything else going on, Mr. Chairman, it would probably be okay, but with everything we've got going, it'd put a strain on it.
Absolutely. Mr. Jones, do we need to pass the rescission, or can we accept the rescission and move on? Help me on okay. So we have rescinded the motion, so I'm going to open the floor again, and I'll go back to my list of folks who wanted to speak. And first was Mr. Neal.
Okay, I want to say this. There's been some concern about, well, if a person worked, then it should all be the same. My experience in life is a little bit different from some people's. I know AJ can relate to this, and a few more people who've been in the military. But when you're in the military, if you are in a hot zone, then you were given increased pay for being in a hot zone or a hostile region. It's a fact. You can look it up. And we may have the same job duties and the same rank, but if you were deployed, you receive more, as you should have, than someone who was maybe at the training center in San Diego, California or something. So I wanted to say that. And by saying that, I also want to say this. If my wife called 911 and I was laying there frothing at the mouth with COVID, Tommy Copeland's ambulance would have pulled up and they would have dealt with me. And on the other hand, if me and Jordan Awanison were both suffering from COVID and we're out there in the street fighting, then the sheriff's office is going to show up and they're going to deal with us. They don't call anything. And I just want to say, I think that means something versus somebody who, hey, I appreciate everybody that worked, especially the guys down at the transfer station. They were always there. But these people who had to do hands-on approach with these people who were infected, and some of them, they suffered from it. They caught COVID on the job. And I don't know how else we can repay them, maybe. But that's what I want to say. I just want to say that I think they deserve something in addition to just what the regular other employees deserve.
Are you making a motion, sir?
Yes, I'll make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that is this the number you felt good with, Mayor, what you've got up there, or?
I mean, I feel good with whatever you feel good with.
Well, I'd like to increase it myself. I'd like to increase it to, I'm going to say, and you know, y'all work with me on this. I'm just pulling it out. But when we're talking about the water and stuff, that's important too. But I also know that the cities, they're getting some money for some of this too. Am I correct?
That's true.
I think the cities, they're going to have some money to go toward this infrastructure stuff and the broadband stuff. So I'd like to make a motion to increase it to 5,000 and 4,000. That's my motion.
All right. So that we all understand, well, I need a second first, I guess.
Second.
Where did that come?
Right here.
Mr. Johnson, seconded.
Okay. So that we all understand, Mr. Neal, what I'm hearing is that you're asking $5,000 for what group?
For the first responder.
And who qualifies? Who would that be?
I would ask the county mayor to identify the group, if that's okay, of who he would consider the ones that would be most directly involved with the public during the pandemic.
And they'd be current employees only, Mr. Chairman, right? We're talking about current employees that are working now, right?
Correct.
We have about 55 of those employees are public safety. If you count EMS, law enforcement, fire, and EMA rescue, 911, those folks that were responding. I was going to give you a number of what they'd come up to, Mr. Chairman. Did you get a second? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, we did get a second.
If you give me this second, I'll tell you how much money that's going to wind up being.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, assuming Mayor Porter's math agrees with mine, that'd be $1,275,000 for emergency personnel and $960,000 for non-emergency personnel.
I got about 2.25 million. Is that where you're at?
What do we do about the part-timers?
That's going to be a decision you need to make on part-time. I don't know if you want to do that in a separate motion, if you want to do it in the same one, but that would, I think we definitely need to do something for them.
So the motion amounts to 2 point what?
2.25 roughly.
2.25 with no part-time consideration. Now, I know we got a lot that want to speak to that, so I'm going to try to be kind to everybody, but I also know we got some department heads or some elected officials who want to speak to it. So I'm going to try to be very fair about all this. I think it's only fair that we hear from the elected folks as far as hearing what they have to say before we take a vote. So I'm going to recognize Randy Jones from the road department that asked to speak.
I know the first responders and everything, probably a lot different than everybody else. That's the profession they chose.
Yeah.
And we got county employees, I've got county employees, I think the world of, I think the world of these guys. But I think they're all county employees, and I think you're gonna give them all $1, or you're gonna give them $300, $5,000, it would be even across the board.
Yes.
Like I said, they chose this profession that they're in. My guys chose the profession they're in. They worked every day just like everybody else. So I think it ought to be spread equally among all the county employees. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Nelson, do you want to address? Come to the mic, please, so we can get it on tape, please. Thank you. Is anyone else? Parks and Rec, you want to address? Anybody else that's over our department want to speak? Okay, then I'm going to move back to my list, and Mr. Williams, you were next. Speaking to the motion. We do have a motion, so let's be sure we're speaking to the motion, which is 5 and 4, okay? Mr. Williams.
Yes. I think most of you know I have several years' experience a long time ago wearing a uniform working in a local emergency service myself. So I am always an advocate for emergency services, and I've always advocated them being paid more as a matter of course, as part of their regular salary because of the nature of their work. But we're talking about a virus here, and it is very difficult to quantify that. It's very difficult to quantify exposure, who got exposed more. We could probably make a stronger argument for EMS than for anyone else, but it's very difficult. And I think if we don't do this correctly, we're going to cause a lot of grumbling and division amongst our county employees. So I'm just going to say that I do believe that all county employees, whatever formula we choose, it needs to be applied the same across the board, regardless of which department or which office they work for. I don't know how this motion's going to go. I can't vote for it. I think the dollars are excessive. I do believe in a stipend. I think the county employees deserve a stipend, those who worked. But I think $4,000 and $5,000 is just a little bit excessive considering all the other things that we're going to need to fund with this money. If this doesn't pass, perhaps we need to postpone this a month and actually have a sit-down work session because it's obvious there's a lot of questions, going to be a lot of back and forth.
Do you want to amend the motion? Are you interested in amending the motion?
My amendment would be that whatever the formula is, it be applied equally regardless of department or job description.
Second.
Do you want to apply a number to that? I think we need to, in some degree, put a number to that so we'll have some idea.
Well, I'm kind of along the lines of AJ there. I think the simplest thing, maybe not simplest, but the fairest thing to do would be to calculate the number of man hours and whatever total amount we come up with, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, 1.5 million, divide that by the man hours and then hand out the stipends according to that. That's the fairest way to do it. But I'm not ready to go forward with a dollar amount right this moment.
So are you wanting to make an amendment?
My amendment was to treat, to use the same formula for all county employees. That's my amendment.
Okay. Do I have a second on that? Where did it come from? Okay. So we have an amendment that states whatever we decide on money-wise, it will be the same for everyone. Does everybody understand where we are with the amendment? Look at me and anybody have I've got a motion and a second, so I'm going to open discussion on the amendment. And I'll need you to raise your hand, and if you will, so that we can recognize you. And Mr. Moss, I saw you first.
Can we amend the amendment?
You can have two amendments.
Okay, I'll put a dollar figure on it. I want to amend his amendment to put $2,500 for every employee straight across the board.
Do I have a second? I hear none, so the amendment fails. The second amendment fails. We're back to the original amendment, and Mr. Christopher, you're recognized.
I would just like some clarification. The first motion was 5 and Mr. Williams' amendment equal. So does that mean that we're still considering that first motion as 5 and 5 and 4 and 4 and 4, or I don't really understand what we're doing here.
All right. What we would do, if the amendment passes, we go back to the original motion, and then someone would have to come up with either number. But the amendment would be added to the motion, and whatever the final number, 4 or 5, would be the same across the board. So,
but it's still limited to that first motion. So let's say the Mr. Williams' amendment passes, and we go back, and that initial motion fails. Are we back to square one?
Absolutely. Does everybody understand what our amendment is And does anybody want to discuss that? All right, I don't see any other discussion, so we'll go to the amendment. We'll vote on the amendment, and the amendment is that whatever the final number is determined, everybody will get the same across the board.
Not quite. It's whatever the method of calculation is. That's an important distinction. Whatever the method of calculation is that we use to determine how the stipends are being awarded, that should be applied the same regardless of title. It doesn't have anything to do with a dollar amount at this point. That'll come a little bit later.
Well, then I'm confused.
So am I.
So let's make sure, if you will, let's discuss it, please. So the motion that Mr. Donadio made that he rescinded or took away, was to postpone it. Your amendment's going to do exactly the same thing because we're not going to be able to do that tonight.
When I pressed my button to speak, that's what it was about. But then we've had a couple of other motions and things like that. So now we're back here. And so I'm speaking to this one. But this is the same point I was going to make.
Okay, folks, then as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, is that his motion is that everybody get the same as determined by calculation, by the number of hours they work divided or multiplied by whatever that.
As a point of order, Mr. Chairman, I don't think he offered a particular method. I think his amendment is merely whatever we decide to do, whether it be a calculation or whether it be a flat rate, that it be applied the same to all county employees.
I don't think that's what he just said. What you just said was the method. And
I didn't state a method. I used that as an example. Whatever the method we use, whether it's hours, whether it's a flat rate, whether it's by week worked, month worked, whatever the method is, it needs to be applied the same regardless of what department you work for.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher, because I was confused. Does everybody understand that? And are you still seconding that motion, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Chairman, as parliamentarian, I'm confused myself, but I feel like Commissioner Williams' amendment should be more like a substitute motion instead of an amendment. Because his amendment doesn't have anything to do with the original motion. Because he didn't put a price tag on anything. So basically, he's changing the motion altogether by amending it the way he did. So we can't, let's say the amendment passes, the amendment says we're giving everybody the same pay, but we're amending the original motion to give different pay. So it's to me, and Mr. Jones can, if he wants to decide, but we talked about it. I think it's a substitute motion if that's what he chooses to do.
I'll be happy to clarify this. I'll rescind my amendment. Let's vote on that first and see what happens, and then I'll make another motion after that.
All right, is everybody okay with that? All right, we have rescinded, and now we're going to open discussion back up on the original motion of Mr. Niels, which is 4 and 5. And I have Mr. Cassidy.
Randy, if you would please, could you flip back to your screen that that showed the different things we were going to spend the money on?
And these are just recommendations that I'm bringing to you that we're going to bring up tonight, and they're estimates. They're not hard numbers.
Right, I understand. What I want to make clear, and I think everybody understands this, if we change that $1 million figure, and I'm neither saying we should or should not, I'm merely saying that if we change that potentially changes what we spend for the other things. If we give all 495 employees $5,000 each, that number would be $2,475,000. If we give all employees $4,000, that would be $1,980,000. So again, I'm not saying vote for or against this. I'm merely saying that we're changing what we're going to spend on some other project by approximately $1 million if we do $4,000 or $5,000, or again, if we do 4 and 5, that's 2.23. And there's certainly some water projects that are desperately needed in our county. We have we have people in the county that do not have city water, that do not have clean water. And we certainly need to do the health department addition. I think we'll get to that in a few minutes, but it's something to think about.
And are you making an amendment of any kind, or just a statement? All right, so the motion is still on the floor, and I'm looking for discussion from Mr. Wilson.
Well, I need to wait because I need to make a motion as well. Can I make a motion,
You can make an amendment,
an amendment?
an amendment, depending on the amendment, as the parliamentarian has pointed out. If it totally changes the motion, then it's a substitute motion.
Okay, then you tell me if this is a substitute motion. My recommendation, if I may do so,
Please.
is full-time employee. I agree. We've got an amazing county employee group. We also have the part-timers that have not been addressed yet. So I think if this American Rescue Fund is available to support our employees across the board, my opinion would be $3,000 per full-time employee. And for those that qualify based upon what Mayor Porter did for part-time, the part-timers should receive half that.
Did you say half that?
Yes.
$1,500?
Yes.
And are you making that?
That is my motion.
That would be, if that, Mr. Parliamentarian, is that a second, substitute motion? Mr. Parliamentarian, Mr. Rogers.
Yes, that is a substitute motion. Can I add one thing before we vote?
You may.
If you are a county employee that sits on this body and you stand to benefit from this stipend, you cannot vote. It's a conflict, it's a direct conflict of interest.
You'd have to abstain.
You have to abstain, therefore that will reduce our membership of the commission, which is 24. Just because Mr. Martin's not here, we still have 24 members. So if, I don't know how many that affects. Ms. Tays, I know that affects you. Anybody else on this body that would stand to get, we're not talking about schools, we're talking about general fund employees, solid waste employees, park and rec employees. Are we missing somebody?
I think she's the only one.
So that reduced our membership to 23, which will change our majority to 12, right?
Right.
Okay. I just want a point of clarification, but yes, that would be a substitute motion.
And did I get a second?
Yes, sir.
I got a second. So the substitute motion is this: 3,000 to all full-times and 1,500 to part-times as determined by the qualifications Mr. Porter has stated. Does everybody understand? Now that's on the floor, so I'm going to open the floor to discuss that. And who would like to address that? Mr. Bennett.
I guess this question will apply to all the motions on the floor. Did any of our county employees lose their job during the pandemic?
No.
Did any of our county employees lose a paycheck during the pandemic? Were they not paid because of the pandemic?
They were. You may have had some that had COVID or something past the time that we were allowing them to have the free COVID time, but they would be able to use sick days and vacation days. So no, I don't know of anybody that lost a paycheck.
Were any of the county employees precluded from receiving the pandemic stimulus money just because they were county employees?
I don't know that.
You know, I didn't see anything in the IRS saying that because you're a county employee, you couldn't receive that. So
Yeah, that'd be.
nobody lost a job, nobody lost a paycheck. They received the pandemic money from the federal government like everybody out in the private sector. So I just wanted to clarify that. But I would like to piggyback, well, it may not be appropriate, on Mr. Neal, that frontline people deserve more than people that aren't frontline.
Mr. Donadio, did you want to address
Yes, I
the
do.
motion?
Again, frontline, I get it. Been there, done that. My motion, I'm sorry, it's going to mess up the motion that we have on the floor right now. So I guess it's not the amendment, but the other one, the one that changes the motion.
Substitute motion?
The substitute motion is that we first move that we set the limit at 1 million, because if we don't do that, we've got to take the money from somewhere else. After we set it at 1 million, then we can figure out who's getting what. So I would move that we set it at 1 million.
Let me ask you what you just said. If we go over $1 million, it's got to come from somewhere else, meaning
It's got to
what?
come from somewhere on this board up there. That we've got to take it from somewhere else, and those other projects need to be done. So what I'm saying is I am moving that we set the money at 1 million. We can figure it out after that.
Okay, so help me out, Mr. Parliamentarian, Mr. County Attorney. Would that be an amendment to the motion, or would that be and can we allow a secondary motion? tertiary motion. Help me with the rules of order here.
That would be a substitute motion.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to fund the amount of money. Original motion with the amount of money. Yeah.
It's going to change everything.
It does.
It would even change the substitute motion.
It would.
Because that's going to go over that amount of money. So, again, do we consider this, Mr. Rogers, as a substitute motion, a tertiary motion, and is that allowable?
It would have to be a substitute, but I'm not sure. Can you substitute a motion? Can you substitute a substitute motion? I can look it up.
I didn't think that was possible.
Well, we want to be right, okay?
Well, I got to get a second first, but.
And my question was, did we get a second? And I'm not sure if we did or did not.
I didn't hear one.
I'll second that.
Where'd that come
Second.
from? Okay, so you're seconding the motion to cap it at $1 million, what we give to the employees, and then to determine how to divide that money.
Yes.
So I do have a motion and a second, and now we'll see if that's allowable. And if so, how it's allowable.
Y'all are making me earn my money tonight.
Me too.
This says you have to amend the substitute motion.
Not in order.
Okay?
Okay.
So it has to be an amendment, and can we accept that motion, or his idea as an amendment to Mr. Wilson's motion? Can we?
I would not recommend it.
Okay. I'm going to accept the counsel of those folks, and we're going to move back to Mr. Wilson's secondary motion, which is 3,000 to full-time employees and 1,500 to part-times. I'll open back the discussion for that motion. Yes, sir, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to appreciate or express my appreciation to Commissioner Wilson for this amendment, because it goes back to what Mr. Nelson, Mr. Jones, and others have said, Mr. Williams as well, too. It needs to be done in fairness, and like was said already by somebody, we've not even discussed the part-timers yet. So I'm glad we are, because our solid waste folks have also been on the front lines. I can remember when Ebola was a big concern back about 7 years ago. I was working at Chick-fil-A, and I used to change trash cans there. And when it came to Texas, we used to see a lot of customers come down I-40 from Texas and changing those trash cans. It was on my mind. I won't lie, or I won't be able to lie by saying it wasn't on my mind to change those trash cans and wonder, okay, if Ebola is coming up this way, will that be a concern? So we know COVID's been a big concern for so many. So those solid waste folks are just as much on the front lines as a lot of our other employees. So I'm glad we're finally bringing them onto the table. I almost think that this motion is probably the fairest way of doing it, where you're putting a certain amount to the full-time, and since others are working part-time, maybe kind of cut that back by half. So from the discussions we've had so far, this is probably the fairest way I've heard of approaching it so far.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wasson. There's any other discussion on our motion? Folks, you're going to have to help me. I don't know who was first, so Ms. Bradford, you haven't spoken, so I'm going to recognize you first.
Randy, if we go over what you've got up there, $1 million, what line item do you think you'll pull from first?
Water projects. And remember, these are just estimates, okay? I just threw that 1 million in because it was kind of where we had talked about last month when you didn't like the 1,200 and 2,000. I'm guesstimating on the broadband expansion. The state's going to put out a grant that we'll have to match if we want to expand broadband all across the county, so everybody's got it. That's an estimate. I think it's pretty close. And then that leaves whatever you want to spend on water, so it would probably come out of the water.
Okay.
But
Then what
ultimately, it's
that's
up to
gonna
you.
do, what I'm thinking here is if we do this and we take water away from people, who's gonna make the decision? I don't wanna be a part of making the decision who's gonna get water and who's not.
Mr. Chairman,
That's just a statement.
can I answer that kind of a question?
Sure.
Kim, that's one thing that's going to be in a future presentation that's coming up is I have a TTU intern that's going to be contacting all those 730 homes that don't have water to see who are interested in it. What we found with CDBG grants is that even though we could have got the grant probably, we had less than 50% of the people that may be on a certain road that were even interested in it because they said they had good springs and wells. So we'll be able to narrow that down some. But yeah, that's going to be a tough decision. Mr. Chairman, one point of order, I guess.
Sure.
On the part-time, I think you need to set a stipulation on that they would have to have worked so many hours. And I'm going to say 500 in that year, because if you don't, that's averaging less than 10 hours a week.
I agree, and I was going after what your recommendations were for who part-time employees, where the qualifications.
And so if they work, if you'd add that to your motion, and then that comes up, Mr. Chairman, to 1,660,000. So you're looking at about 660,000 more than what we originally talked about on the million.
So you did add that to your motion, Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Is that correct? So
Yeah, I said that earlier, that whatever he had, yes, absolutely.
So now we know that's 500 hours. That's what the criteria that our mayor will be using for part-time people. All right, Mr. Moss, you were next.
Mr. Chairman, what was that figure he just quoted?
1,660,000.
That was my question.
Yes, sir. And we're on Mr. Wilson's motion, and so I've got Mr. Randolph. Do you want to speak to Mr. Wilson's motion?
Yes, the reason that I made the second on the amendment that didn't really need to fly, I guess, is because I really think we need to keep it at $1 million. And how we distribute it, disperse it, I'm open to that. But I really don't think we need to go over $1 million. I think you put some thought into that already. And I think there's a good plan in place, and we need to stick with $1 million.
That we have not been able to accept that, Mr. Randolph. We made a ruling from our parliamentarian and our county attorney that we couldn't accept the motion that was made. So the way to handle that is we vote on these motions, and if they're turned down, then we begin again. And that's perfectly okay. But right now, we're going to move to Mr. Wilson's motion as it relates to $3,000 and $1,500 for full-time and part-time people.
Still got me.
That's where we're at. So we're still on that discussion. And Mr. Randolph, does anyone else want to speak to that motion?
Still got Ms. Tays.
Can Ms. Tay speak, being as she's affected? That's my question.
She can speak, she just can't vote.
Okay, very good. Ms. Tays, you're recognized.
So all the surrounding counties that I've spoke with, they have not separated. They've paid all their employees the same from their money. Number two, does the cities not have, they have money for water to help people get water and sewer and all that too, correct? From this.
Inside the cities.
Every city had money. Every county had money.
And the
from this
cities,
CARES Act, yeah.
and the cities can only spend their money inside the city.
Right. for
Or
what they
inside their
need.
territory.
Yes. So we're going to take money and help these cities to advance out for water? Is that what?
No, you're
It's
looking at
coming
the
from the
territories
county?
out in the county that don't have water, is getting the utility districts or the cities that may cover those people to be able to help them to get water to those people that don't have it. But they're all out in the county. There's none inside.
Well, several of them have spoke to me about it. That's been on wells and springs forever. They will not change.
And
They
that's
don't-
okay.
Yeah.
They don't
So,
have to take
yeah,
it.
you
Let me
had
keep us
quite a few,
directed, and I'm
yeah.
sorry, Ms. Tays, it's a valid point, and certainly we've got a discussion coming on water. But this is all about the stipends, pronounce it as you will.
Well, I did talk to some surrounding counties, and they did not separate their employees, is what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else who wants to address our motion before we move forward and take a vote? Mr. Neighbors, the motion we're voting on. Vote yes if $3,000 to full-time and $1,500 to part-time who have worked at least 500 hours is the motion. That will be the stipend. Okay? Any questions? Make sure that you're clear.
1.6 million.
That's the total according to, but again, the numbers are 3,500 and 1,500. That's the motion. So there could be some variance, but according to the calculations, that's close. Okay? And
Those numbers are wrong.
The motion's 3,000 and 1,500.
what did I say?
You said 3,500.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that at all. It's 3,000 full-time and 1,500 part-time.
That
All
has
right.
worked at least
I'm sure-
500 hours.
I'm sorry?
That has worked at least 500
Part-time
hours.
who have worked at least 500
That's what I
hours
wrote down.
during this period.
Yes.
And if you notice, there is a period stated. It is from June 1st of 20 to July 31st of 21. That is the time period. Everybody clear with that? All right, Mr. Nadio, do you want to speak again?
And never mind, it's just been a while since he answered this, and he's gonna pull it from the water funds. That 600,000 is where you're
What?
thinking about pulling it, because I need to know where that money's gonna come from.
Well, just realize it's all in a lump sum right now. There is no, until you divide it out, it's all sitting in a lump sum. It's gonna be 15.5 million. We got half of it already. We'll get the other half next May, but it's in one lump sum. Those are just my numbers that I used as estimates, when we were talking about it last month and working forward.
So to add on to that, Mr. Nadia, we have 15 point something million that we can spend as designated by the state.
Oh, sure, no, I
So
completely
the
understand
point
that.
is, there's no other fund it'll come from. It'll come from the 15 million, and
Yes.
we as a body decides how we spend the
How we're gonna
15
spend
million. This is our first take-up of that money. That's what we're addressing today, and according to the motion that's on the floor, there'll be 1.6 something million spent toward the stipends, and then we're going to move toward water, and Mr. Porter has a presentation as it relates to our county water problems. Is that, am I helping, hurting, or should I?
Well, I'm just wondering at this point, oh gosh, I hate to do this, y'all gonna hate me, but that's okay. Can we hear those other presentations and then come back to this one, because that's information that.
I've got a
I don't
motion
have.
on the floor. I've got a motion and a second on the floor, and that's where we're going to move
Okay.
to that
All right, that's
motion.
fine.
We're going to take a vote on this motion.
That's
folks.
fine.
Anybody want to say anything else? Mr. Rogers?
I think Ms. Real is before me.
Yeah, I think you pretty much well answered it, Mike, but when you were talking about taking the money away, I think it's up to us where the money's taken away.
Absolutely. No question.
So I don't know where you can say, take it away from water. It could be taken from one of the other projects that was listed up there.
We just have to qualify this money
Exactly.
as where we spend it.
Thank you.
And that's exactly right. We determine that because we are the funding.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay? Everybody understand? I don't want anybody confused where we're voting, folks. All right, Mr. Neighbors.
All right, if you favor the motion, take your handsets and vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Ms. Tays, be sure and press abstain, please. Press abstain. Everyone else, vote accordingly, please. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no.
They still have to be counted in our vote
There will be an abstain if they've left.
For the total, is what I'm saying.
Right, but since they've
So
left.
we
they
need
were here,
12,
We have to
my
abstain.
understanding.
All right, all votes are in. Does anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right, Mr. Chairman. If my calculation is correct, Mr. Chairman, you have 13 voting yes, 6 voting no, 3 abstains, 1 absent. Motion carries.
All right. Mr. Parliamentarian, because it was a substitute motion, we do not need to consider the first motion. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Jones, you'd agree with that? All right. Let's move then on to our water project.
Actually, the health department's next, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize. Good break.
Our health department as you well know, has done an amazing job when it's come to this COVID virus with testing and vaccinations and seeing thousands and thousands of people. That health department was built back in 2007-8, and the growth that they have seen has been unbelievable. And one of the things that this money is allowed to be spent for is public health. So Lisa Bumblow, who's our health department director, already had her vacation scheduled weeks ahead of time to be gone. And I told her if she wanted to fly back just for this meeting, and I said absolutely not. She gave me this presentation, and I'd bring it to you. And so I'll talk about it. We have an agreement with the state that we fund the building, and they fund almost all of the rest of the expenditures. 92% of the funding from that after that comes from the state. You have this handout that was given to you, so I'm not going to read all this to you. These were the numbers that I thought was amazing. This past year, they had saw almost 15,000 patients, and those 15,000 patients got 138,000 services provided to them. They have a primary care clinic that averages about 4,365 patients a year. They have 61,866 COVID tests that they have done in the past year and a half. 80,409 COVID vaccinations. They're doing additional doses now. They're doing a drive-through flu clinic. These folks, we talk about the frontline workers with our EMS, law enforcement, and all those folks. These are definitely the frontline workers also. That they've done a great job of making sure that the virus was taken care of. The problem that we have with the health department is it has one entrance and one exit. And that presents a problem with them seeing hundreds of people a day, and some of those people not only may have COVID, they may have tuberculosis, they may have other communicable diseases, so it's become a real problem for them being able to see that many patients, and I'm going to talk about that just a little later. The state and federal government have been really good to us this year. We've got almost $400,000 in funds that they did stuff to the health department on their own that they paid for that the county did not. They replaced 3 of the HVAC units at the health department with new ones with new filters in it that filtered the air inside the health department. Canopy, new message board. They changed out all of the dryers inside the hands towels in the bathrooms and the dryers. I'm not going to read all that to you. You can see all the stuff that they provided. And we have an opportunity coming up for the state to pay almost half of this expansion at the health department, where in normal times the county would have to foot the whole bill. So that's the reason I'm bringing it to you as part of the American Rescue Funds. This is what the health department looks like now. They have 3 different areas where the red stars are. That is different clinics that have multiple exam rooms in each one of those clinics, each one of them being designed for a specific type of patient. Then the green X is their storage area, which is way too small for them to be able to store the things that they have to store today, and one public entrance coming in the front of the building. So the proposal is that we add an addition on the north side of the building that would add those additional clinical rooms, isolation and quarantine rooms, waiting area. That whole addition would be for anybody that is considered to have a communicable disease that could be detrimental to all the other people that they're seeing on a daily basis inside the health department. Looking at a covered canopy going along the front. Today, if you drive over to get your free flu shot at the health department, those folks are standing outside in a tent, and they will come to your car and give you your free flu shot, and it's regardless of what the weather is. If it's hot, if it's cold, if it's raining, they're out there doing that. And then their medical storage, we're looking at expanding that and adding 1,500 more square foot onto that. When you look at this whole project, as I told you, we have an agreement with the state that we fund the building, but they're willing to pay almost 50% of the expansion if we'd be willing to do it. This is coming from their American Rescue Funds. It's coming down from the federal government. So we have a chance to do a $1.6 million expansion to the health department that is direly needed for $850,000, which is the estimate. The state is willing to pay, we've already got actually the $75,000 to pay for the covered canopy. They already gave us that money, and they're willing to fund the rest of it if we're willing to add the addition to the building. What I'd be looking for from you, if you're willing to do this and commit to adding to the building, is an approval for me to hire a construction manager that would proceed with the addition to the health department, and for the county share for that addition not to exceed $850,000. It would be paid out of the American Rescue Funds. Should the project come in higher than that, we would do some form of cutting to the project to bring it down, but we feel pretty good about the number that we come up with. And going forward, I just remember this, and I'm not trying to tell you you've got to do this, I'm recommending to you that you do it, but if we have to do this in the future, which you're going to have to at some point, it's already really needed right now, you'll have to fund the whole part of it, not just the half. So that's what I'm bringing to you tonight. Lisa apologizes for not being able to be here, but I told her there was no way she was going to lose her vacation after all that they've done for the past year and a half. So I'm presenting to you.
Absolutely. Mr. Cassidy.
I move that we give the county mayor the approval to hire a construction manager, proceed with these additions, and county funds from American Rescue Plan not to exceed $850,000.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Wilson.
One question, I'm in 100% support of this, but when you mentioned about the appointment of the construction manager, is this something that's going to go out for bid?
We do an RFQ when we do a construction manager. We did one for the jail,
right,
which is Bell Construction. My goal would be able, because of us trying to get ahead of all these other projects that are going to be going on everywhere else, is to use that same construction manager we're using for the jail, because I think we'll get, while they're here, we can get a real good job, and I think a better deal.
Possibly be a little cost savings because they're already here.
Absolutely, that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Dunn?
And I am in favor of the motion. I'd just like to ask a question. Those canopies that are going to be installed, are they going to have heaters and fans, I hope?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Those people, we want to make them as comfortable as possible while they're out there.
Jordan.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. With this and some of the other things that we're looking at, I know, of course, it's federal money, but also coming from state too, but sometimes if like Department of Education funds go into the schools, some other things too, sometimes the federal government does put certain stipulations, more of in a progressive way, on communities with some of the funds that come out. Are we aware of anything that the federal government's putting, like maybe the Department of Health, when it comes to this sort of nature, or any other things that we're looking at, broadband, some other things? Is there any stipulations or strings attached that we have to be concerned about, where they're going to try to encourage us to change our culture in any way or anything like that?
Not on this. This is actually one of the pieces, along with water and broadband and employee stipends. This is one of the pieces is public health and adding additions to your existing health facilities.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
And just let me add on, Mr. Mayor, that also goes with the stipends, right? There is no strings attached from the federal government.
As long as we follow the guidelines and it's an addition to the public health facilities or its employee stipends or so forth, as long as we meet what they've said.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Mr. Neighbors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. Everybody can vote. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. I'm going to abstain Mr. Ford and Mr. Sandlin.
He went.
All right. Shall we wait or just abstain? Huh? I can't move on.
Benefit.
Rogers, do you want to abstain him, or do you want to wait for him?
Let me do it. Oh, here he comes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Gary. I was like, wait.
Mr. Holmes, while you're walking, we have a motion on the floor to accept this and give the mayor the authority to do so.
Sorry, I had.
All right. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey. Wait.
Let me, while I'm getting this vote, the one just a second ago, I announced that as 13 yes, 6 no. It was actually 13 yes, 7 no, 3 abstained, and 1 absent. I apologize. On this vote, there is 21 yes, 2 abstain, and 1 absent. Motion carried.
All right, now water, Mr. Porter.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, for the length on all this, but
Not
this is
at all.
important stuff that we've had some short meetings before, so it all has to come sometime. So it all come together, and we're trying to get ahead of, when you look at 95 counties and all the money that's flowing and all the projects they're going to be doing, I'm trying to get ahead of some of those with some of this so we don't get stuck, delayed, and with a lot higher prices. The Green Mountain Water Project was passed by the commission already. So what I'm asking of you tonight is, instead of us taking that out of capital projects, where we originally decided to do, is to take it out of the American Rescue Funds, which is specifically for water projects, and that way we can use the money in capital projects for something else. Keith Morrison, and Keith, I'm sorry for the length, but he's a city manager. We've been working on this project for some time. Folks up there on the mountain and Commissioner Reel and Atwood's district, we met with those folks. They're really wanting water, and it's ready to go. The estimation on the project is $415,000. What allows us to do with on these, if we take it out of the American Rescue Funds, is that it would be at no cost to the people. So if you have an existing home in that area, there will be no water tap fee, and there will be no cost to those people to get the water. If we'd have done it out of the capital projects, there was going to be a cost to those folks. So I think it's, with all the other water projects we're doing, it would be the same thing. There would be no cost to the people when to get them the water to them. That would be for folks that have homes there currently. If it's an empty lot or a future home, they would have to pay tap fees to the city just like anybody else would if you were building a new home. And the other thing we're going to do is put in a 6-inch water line instead of a 4-inch, which is going to raise the capacity to that area so it would carry it way into the future as more and more homes are built up there. That's one of the reasons you haven't seen a lot of growth in that area, is because there's not water. And some of those people are dealing with sulfur wells. And I can't imagine on a day-to-day basis having to deal with a sulfur well and them having to truck water in. So the only thing I'm asking you tonight is to approve us taking that $415,000 out of the American Rescue Funds instead of it coming out of capital projects like it was originally done.
And if I can add to that, with the cost going up, this may not be a ceiling. It's close. The engineers, Mr. Morrison, I believe, have already established this number. But between now and the time that we actually can build it, may be some increases. So we may have to come back. If this motion passes, are we, I guess, putting a number, or are you asking us to put a number on this project, Mr. Porter?
Well, what I'm asking is go ahead and approve the project. We can go and get it bid and get it going. If it's any major increase, I'll come back to you with what the increase is. But if it's minor, I mean, if it's $5,000 or $10,000, I won't come back to you, I mean, with a small amount unless you just really want me to. Or if you want to cap it at a higher amount and give me a little room there, I'm okay with that too. But with the way water pipe and everything is right now, we want to get it out and get it bid as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, sir. Mr. Wyden.
I'd like to go ahead and make that motion that we accept this Green Mountain Water Project not to exceed $415,000.
Second.
Second.
Let me back up. Now, if you put a cap on it, then we're going to have to come back.
Yeah.
Do you want to put the cap on it, or to give the mayor the option of coming back if it's an excessive amount? And I'm just asking what you want your motion to read.
I'll remove the cap on that, so everything else except for the cap.
Okay. So we're going to fund the water project out of these funds as opposed to capital projects, which we had already approved. Does everybody understand what we're voting on? Mr. Neighbors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. again, I'm going to abstain Mr. Ford. I will abstain Mr. Sandlin. Ms. Tays? All right, all votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Excellent. I'll vote. Mr. Chairman, we have 21 voting yes, 2 abstain, 1 absent. Motion carries.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll move on to number 3, nominating committee.
Whoop, Mr. Chairman,
What did I miss?
water tank.
That's what I meant.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Meeting with Keith also, when you start looking at water in the eastern end of the county that Allgood serves, I don't know, do you know what year the water tank was put in, Keith? It's been there a long time. This service is the people out in the county up on top of Buck Mountain, and it's been there many years. When you look at its current capacity of 75,000 gallons, right now Keith thinks the usage up there on the mountain is about 150,000 gallons. That means those pumps are pumping almost all the time to try to keep up with the flow. The problem we have now is up on Buck Mountain, up on towards Brotherton, there is no room for any growth up there. You can't, no major home expansions, no major subdivision expansions, those kind of things to be able to handle the water. We were looking at replacing that tank since this services people out in the county, and Allgood was good enough back years ago to put the tank in and service these people up there. We first thought that there was going to be a cost of about $475,000 to replace that tank with a new 300,000 gallon tank. He's talked to his engineers after today and after we started this, and with tank prices, that may be higher than that. So it could be 475, it could be 500, it could be 550. We just don't, it's in that general ballpark area. But at some point, if we want water to expand up on the Buck Mountain and go further, this tank is going to be replaced. And so I'm bringing it to you tonight. We can do one or two things. You can either go ahead and approve it and we can go forward with it, or we can take it and put it out for bids and draw everything up, put it out for bids, and then bring that dollar figure back if we need to. The one thing that we looked at adding it to the state's money that they're putting out. But what we're seeing is it's going to be way into next year before that a lot of that match money is going to be made available. We're guessing that prices are going to go up even more than what they are. We think there's going to be so many projects that are going to be put out across the state. You're going to have a problem with enough contractors to be able to do it. So what I've done is just picked out these couple that are really primary for us to get ahead of the game on. So Mr. Chairman, it's in your district. You're in Commissioner Reels, so if you have something you want to add, that's where we're at right now.
So that we're clear on what we're talking about, Mayor, another 400 plus thousand to replace the tank.
Yes, sir.
Now, is this owned by Allgood?
Yes, sir.
And are they contributing anything toward that? So you're contributing 200,000 toward the project. We're contributing 400 and something. So that everybody's clear. Not trying to confuse us. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew or understood. And I've got Mr. Wilson first.
Is there enough land there instead of replacing the tank that we could add another tank at that site? So the expansion would be there. And also, I assume that we're talking a 6-inch lines all the way up and down Buck Mountain Road?
Actually, the line going.
That's even better. That's even better.
Now, what we are already doing is tank range.
I'm sorry, I took the wrong picture. Sorry.
We're pumping about 23 hours a day. We put on pump. Because that's one of the biggest complaints we get
Okay, so if you take the tank down and put it back up, how long is it gonna take to fill the tank up to, so, how much downtime are we gonna have?
What we do there is we do basically a constant on pressure pump. Basically, spinning tank on it. Man on line, fix the pumps on, man off, fix the pump, well, tank out of service. Rebuild a new tank, fire back. We have to do this for 5 years, we have to have that tank protected. About every 15, 20 years, we have to have it tank, all fitting, fixed, have it all resealed. That gets expensive.
Has there been any concern about the structural integrity of the steel that's there now?
Tank that's there now is actually just redone. I mean, it's actually good, it's just not big.
Again,
The second tank inside it, when it first installed, so the tank.
Mr. Cassidy?
Just to be clear, Randy, Keith, whoever wants to answer, All Good is the water utility district that is serving this part of the county, but this is not in All Good city limits. It's out in the county.
Yes, sir.
The tank only serves this county.
That got you, Mr. Cassidy?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. So, any other discussion? We have no motion, so there's no vote at this point. Okay, Jordan?
Yeah, thank you, good. I did hit the button, maybe it's not agreeing with me there. Did we say what year this was again, Mr. Morrison?
I don't know the exact year, it's still. Check it over 5 years, just had it repainted. Again, the tank's fine, as far as condition wise, purpose, last, problem, not, tank condition, tank capacity. We're talking about a 75,000 gallon tank. That tank will last about half.
And like we discussed in the previous business, we're trying to open that area up for more water by passing that motion we just did a moment ago as well, too, looking for growth in that area. I do like the ideas that Mayor Porter brought to us, especially the idea of putting it out to bid. I think in the long-term interest of the county, I think that would probably be the best way to go about that, maybe try to find some savings. So I'd like to go ahead and make that motion that we put this project out for bid.
Second.
Go forward.
So that I understand, you've been given the authority with this motion, and if it passes, to bid this out as you've indicated on your presentation. Is that my understanding?
Yes, sir.
And does everybody understand what we're voting on? This point, we have no cost. We've got an estimate, okay? But we're not sealing to a cost. We're going to bid it and see if it comes in cheaper, and I assume, will bring that back.
Can I ask,
You may.
if that bid was to come in close to where the 475, let's say it's under $500,000, would you be agreeable for us to go ahead and do it and not have to wait a month to bring it back to the commission?
I would be agreeable with that.
So now we put a cap up to 500,000 to give the mayor the authority to investigate that, to bid it out, and if it's under that number, to move forward. Again, it's not going to get any cheaper. Steel is going up, so we either move now or we wait and then bite the bullet down the road. So that's our motion, and I've got Mr. Donadio.
Actually, when he said that, that's what my motion was going to be, is that we go ahead and bid this thing out and get it going. So.
Same wavelength again.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Get him ahead.
My question was, do you think 500,000 is going to be enough with the increased pricing and competition?
Probably not. I think it's going to be more like 550.
That's where I was going. I'd like to amend the motion to take it to 550,000, because I do agree cost is going up.
I second that.
Okay, so we have unless you want to add it to your motion to
Yeah, can-
550 and simplify things, and if not, that's okay.
That would sure be great if you do that.
Absolutely,
Me as a
for
bookkeeper.
all of us.
I can do that. It's easier, especially after what we've gone through today. Not a bad thing.
We have raised the limit, we have raised the cap to 550,000, and we have given authority or we will be given, if we vote yes, to give the authority to the mayor to bid that out. Again, everybody understand that? And is there any other discussion? Mr. Donadio.
I am so sorry. Is this coming out of capital projects or the American Fund?
American Rescue Funds.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions? Great questions. All right, Mr. Wayne.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. If you favor this motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Again, for Mr. Ford, I'm going to abstain him. Mr. Sandlin, I am going to abstain him, which means our vote to a tally. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right.
Mr. Chairman, could I make one more comment while he's tallying the vote?
You may.
Just one final thing. I am working with the Jackson County Mayor and the Jackson County Utility District on the Martins Creek project, which is going to be a big one. It services a lot of people down there. I just wanted you to know that I'm continually looking at all these other projects, and with this new intern that's coming in to contact all these people, going to try to prioritize with these other projects which ones are wanted the worst. So, but we may be able to do a joint county effort with Jackson County on the Martins Creek area, because they have an area just across the county line that they want to cover also. So hopefully I'll be bringing that to you in the next couple of months.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a second, let's get our vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, I have 21 voting yes, 2 abstain, 1 absent. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Neighbors. Who was that? Mr. Cassidy, were you asking to speak?
Very, very quickly, Randy, before we finish with the fiscal review agenda, you know me, I'm always doing the math. So we've spent about $3.5 million tonight of the $15.5 million of the ARP money. So we've still got another $12 million that this body will get to decide where we're going to spend it and what'll happen with it.
Totally your decision. I'll be bringing you back projects, and you'll either approve them or not, and we'll move forward till we spend all the money.
Thank you. That completes fiscal review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, very much, and thank you, Commissioners. Great night. I know it was long, but however. Nominating.
All right, the nominating committee recommends for a 2-year term, 3 nominations to the audit committee for 2-year terms to expire in October of 2023. The names are Ben Rogers, Jim Martin, and Mike Atwood, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the nominations? Favor the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Report of special committees. Any reports? I don't think that redistricting is met, so there's probably nothing new to tell there. We meet the 26th.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So
October
we'll
26th.
have a new report. Any other special committees? All right, resolutions.
No resolutions, Mr. Chairman.
And election of notaries.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Rainey Adams, Cindy R. Antwine, Deborah D. Baker, Evan Bryant, Douglas E. Carr, Julie A. Chambers, Candy Cravens, Daria Cross, Tammy A. Dickens, Jarena Ellis, Julia Foy, Don Frazier, Houston Hamblin, Tia Jensen, Maria K. Johnson, David Matson, Tanya Michelle McBride, Sonia E. McCormick, Christy Mackey Nobitz, Elizabeth Presley, Carrie J. Stafford, Bo Stout, Marlene White, Paul White, and finally, Natasha D. Wittenberg.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the notaries? Okay, Mr. Clerk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you're not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Go ahead and vote yes. I'll vote these guys abstain. Abstain. I'm going to call for the vote. Here we go. Same as previous, have 21 voting yes, 2 abstain, 1 absent. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Appreciate it. Again, thanks to everyone for the night. Any other new business? And recognize the reappointment of Wayne Moss to the Old Gainesville Road Utility District Board to term expire September 30th of 225, and we're just recognizing that. No vote needed, I don't believe. It is an appointment.
Already been sworn in.
So we'll move to 8, which is announcements, and I believe Commissioner Randolph has one he wants to make.
Yes, this is for the county commissioners and all elected officials. The powers that be with D.R. Horton, America's Builders, who are developing the project out on, Greystone, out on Buck Mountain Road, and the development down on Highway 56. They're having an open house, a grand opening, November the 3rd at 11 a.m., and they've extended an invitation for all of us to attend. And they just would really like to have us there. If you don't have any commitments, that is November 3rd. I think that's a Wednesday at 11 o'clock.
I'll send you a calendar invite, but they asked that you RSVP so they can, they're gonna be feeding everybody, so for lunch. And so if you can let me know if you're gonna be coming, but I'll try to send that out tomorrow.
Thank you, Commissioner Randolph. Anyone else have an announcement or statement? Special thanks to each one of you for your patience and your time tonight, guys. Great night, great work, a lot of done. We've helped our county a bunch in a lot of areas, so pat yourselves on the back. I want to say a special thanks to our parliamentarian and our county attorney and our county clerk, who have both worked themselves pretty hard tonight. Our chairman, thank you. And folks, if there's nothing else,
May I say one thing?
you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you to those of you tonight who voted to bless our county employees. I have an amazing staff. They did an amazing job during COVID, and I appreciate your support for them tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
Also,
Yeah, I'm sorry,
I
Ms.
want to
Tate.
thank everybody for recognizing the county employees. Every now and then, it just feels good to be recognized.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me say one more thing, then we'll go. It appears COVID is going down some. We may go back to chambers next month. We haven't made the decision yet, so but be aware that, if things continue as they are, we may go back to chambers, okay? If there's nothing else, you stand adjourned.